Today is June the 12th, and I have a story here about a man who played a key role in many ways in the Reformation in England. And he is a perfect example of a person who was prepared to leave his conscience aside and avoid every scruple to gain wealth and position. And his name was Richard Rich. He was born probably in London in the year 1496. Little is known of his early life, but he was ambitious from youth. He may have studied as a lawyer, and by the early 1530s, through promotions and seeking powerful patrons, and through a variety of posts, he became prominent. By the year 1533, he was knighted by Henry VIII, and then became Solicitor General for England and Wales. If you have seen the film A Man for All Seasons, you will be acquainted with the character of Richard Rich. He worked under the worldly Thomas Cromwell, and he was like the lesser hammer, as it were, of Cromwell, to demolish the monasteries and gain their wealth. And he secured the operation of Henry VIII's Act of Supremacy, where Henry was making himself head of the Church of England. Rich, of course, had a key part to play in the trials of Sir Thomas More and also Bishop John Fisher, who are now both saints and martyrs. Quite frankly, Rich lied during their trials, and he was unscrupulous about it. Thomas More refers to Rich as always reputed light of tongue, a great dicer and gamester, and not of any commendable fame. Rich then would go on to play a major part in the downfall of Cromwell himself, who was Lord Chancellor during the reign of Edward VI following Henry VIII. And perhaps as a salve to his conscience, Rich founded Felsted School and the almshouses around there in Essex in 1564. He died in his own bed, friendless but extremely wealthy in the things of the world, having made himself wealthy and prestigious on the backs of persecuted opponents of church and state. Since the mid-16th century, Rich has had a highly negative reputation for being dishonest, for double-dealing, perjury and treachery, seldom matched in English history. And one historian, Hugh Trevor Roper, dismissed Rich as a man of whom nobody had ever spoken a good word. In the film, A Man for All Seasons, Thomas More quotes the words of our Lord from chapter 8 of Mark's Gospel. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but suffers the loss of his soul? Thomas More and John Fisher were giants for freedom of conscience and men who stood by their principles despite the consequences, and both were executed for not agreeing to Henry VIII's divorce and naming himself head of the Church of England. Unlike these men, Rich perjured himself and was partly responsible for these saints' executions. And Rich seemingly easily dismissed his conscience and did whatever was necessary for wealth and position. What an example Moore and Fisher are, and Oliver Plunkett too. In a world where today so many people seem to change their principles for worldly reasons and deny conscientious objection. We see the towering example of Moore and Fisher and Plunkett, and the pitiful example of Richard Rich, who was prepared to do anything for worldly wealth and position. I finish by paraphrasing Thomas Moore. May we be God's good servants first and live by his commands. Richard Rich died in 1567, 453 years ago on this day.